What if the person keeping you stuck is no longer the person who hurt you, but the person you became while trying to survive what they did? That doesn't mean the pain was your fault, but it does mean your healing can't depend on somebody else's changing. At some point, you have to confront the habits you call protection, the patterns you call personality, and the excuses you call reasons. Because the mirror doesn't create the truth, it reveals it. And once you see it, you have a choice. Keep repeating what wounded you or become the person who finally breaks the pattern.
This is a Vibrant Minds presentation. Welcome to Sit at the Table, hosted by Abdul, Episode 6.
Welcome back to the table for episode 6. For the last two conversations, we've been working our way towards this mirror. We started with the people around us, friends, family, boundaries. Then we went deeper. We talked about conditioning, the things we learned, the things we saw, and the things we carried into adulthood without even realizing it. But I knew when we started those conversations that eventually we were going to end up here. Because I can set boundaries with everybody around me. I can understand everything that happened to me. I can trace behaviors back to where they started. But eventually, I will have to deal with Abdul. And you still have to deal with the person looking back at you. Episode 4 asked us to look around. Episode 5 asked us to look back. Today, I'm asking us to look within. And sometimes, that's the hardest place to look. Once you know, what do you do? Because here's the thing. Once you start recognizing your conditioning, you can't unsee it. And once you realize that's why I respond that way, that's why I shut down, that's why I get angry, that's why I don't trust, that's why I stay, that's why I leave, that's why I push people away. Now you know. And knowing creates a different responsibility. Because before, maybe I didn't understand why I was doing something. But once I understand it, I have another question to answer. What am I going to do about it? I repeat, what am I going to do about it? That's where this conversation gets uncomfortable. Because sometimes understanding ourselves feels like healing. But understanding is only the beginning. Conditioning explains, accountability changes. This is something I've been thinking about since the last episode. Conditioning explains, but accountability changes. Let's say that one more time. Conditioning explains, but accountability changes. My conditioning might explain why I have trouble trusting people, but accountability asks, what am I doing to learn how to trust the right people? My conditioning might explain why I don't communicate when I'm upset, but accountability asks, what am I doing to become a better communicator? My conditioning might explain why I respond with anger, but accountability asks, what am I doing with that anger now? My conditioning might explain my vulnerability feels dangerous, but accountability asks, am I willing to learn another way? That's the difference. And I had to start asking those questions to myself. I had to look at Abdul because I could tell you everything somebody else did. I can tell you who disappointed me, who hurt me, who didn't show up, who didn't understand me, who should have done better. And some of those things would be true. But I had to ask myself, what did Abdul do? How did I respond? How did I communicate? Did I communicate at all? Did I tell people what I needed? Or did I expect them to just know? Did I set a boundary? Or did I stay quiet and then get angry when someone crossed a line they didn't know existed? Did I forgive? Or did I say I forgave while still carrying the situation that I was upset about? Did I walk away from things that weren't healthy? Or did I stay because dysfunction had become familiar? Those questions are harder because now I can't point across the table. Now I have to look in the mirror. This is an interesting concept. Sitting down and I was thinking about this, especially because of my past and the things I've been through. This question is different. Who's paying for your old wounds? I repeat that. Who's paying for your old wounds? And here's the question I had to sit with. Maybe somebody listening needs to sit with this too. Who's paying today for something someone else did to you yesterday? Let's think about that. Maybe somebody betrayed you, and now a person who never betrayed you can't earn your trust. Maybe somebody abandoned you, and now you leave first because you're afraid somebody else will leave you again. Maybe nobody listened to you growing up, and now you don't know how to communicate what you need. Maybe anger was the only emotion you were allowed to show, and now every emotion comes out looking like anger. Maybe chaos was normal. So when life gets peaceful, it feels strange. And instead of protecting peace, you find yourself creating chaos again. Not because you're a bad person, but because it's familiar. That's conditioning. But once you see it, you have a choice. The mirror is not to blame. And that's what I want to make sure we understand in this episode. It isn't about looking in the mirror and blaming yourself for everything. There are things people did to you that you did not deserve. There are things you survived that you never asked for. Accountability doesn't mean everything is my fault. Accountability means I'm responsible for what I do next. That's different. I can't change what somebody did, but I can change what I do. But I can decide whether what they did gets to control my life forever. That's where my power comes back. That's where your power comes back. There was something else while I was going through my journey, and I'm still going through my journey, but there's a question I had to ask myself, and I had to think about it deeply. And here's the question. What does it mean to be a man? And for me, one of the biggest things I had to examine in the mirror was what I had been conditioned to believe a man was supposed to be. And I say a man because that's the experience I can speak from. I can't speak from a woman's experience the way a woman can, but I can speak from mine. And a lot of us were taught to be strong. Don't cry. Don't show weakness. Handle your business. Protect, provide, keep moving. Don't let anybody see you break. But what happens when the person protecting everybody else is hurting? What happens when everybody depends on you, but you don't know how to say, I need help? What happens when you're taught how to survive, but nobody ever taught you how to heal? I had to start redefining what strength meant to me. Strength isn't pretending nothing hurts. Strength can be saying, I was wrong. Strength can be apologizing. Strength can be having the difficult conversations. Strength can be asking for help. And strength can be saying there is something there in me that I need to work on. None of that is weakness, it's growth. Here's another interesting concept I had to really think about. And I wanted to bring it to the table today. And I definitely want you to listen to this very carefully. Let's listen to this concept and, let me know if it resonates with you later on. You may have to outgrow yourself. We've talked about outgrowing friends. We've talked about outgrowing relationships. We've talked about setting boundaries with people we love. But here's something else. Sometimes you have to outgrow yourself. The version of you that helped you survive may not be the version that can help you where you're trying to go. Maybe the old version of you needs walls. Maybe the new version needs boundaries. There's a difference. Maybe the old version of you needed anger just to survive. Maybe the person you're becoming needs peace. Maybe the old version learned not to trust. Maybe the new version needs to learn discernment, so you don't treat every new person like somebody from your past. I'm going to repeat that one. Maybe the old version of you learned not to trust anyone. Maybe the new version of you needs to learn discernment, so you don't treat every new person like somebody from your past. You don't have to hate who you used to be. That person may have gotten you here. But just because that version of you got you here, doesn't mean that version has to take you where you're going. The questions now have to change. And maybe this is where they begin to change. Because in episode 5, we spent time asking, why am I like this? Where did this come from? What did I learn? What did I see? What was I conditioned to believe? Those are important questions. But eventually, the question has to become, who do I want to be now? Not who did my childhood teach me to be? Not who did that relationship turn me into? Not who did survival force me to become? Who do I want to become? That's the person I want you to look for in the mirror. Again, who do I want to become? And that is the person I want you to look for in the mirror. Not just the person you've been, but the person you are becoming. So you pulled up the chair. And this is why I wanted to have these type of conversations. Because a seat at the table isn't about me sitting here telling you how to live your life. I'm sitting at the table too. I'm asking myself some of these same questions. I'm looking at these things I still need to work on. I'm still growing, learning, and looking in my own mirror. And that's what I want this table to be. A place we can say, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm willing to look, listen, and learn. I'm willing to talk. I'm willing to grow. That's the community we're building. Real conversations, real people, real growth. Here's something to take with you. Before we leave the table, I want to give you something. 3 episodes, 3 different places. We've had to look. Episode 4, we looked around us. Who's around me? Who has access to me? Where do I need boundaries? Episode 5, we looked behind us. What shaped me? What did I learn? What did I carry into adulthood? And today, we looked within, at the person in the mirror. So sometime this week, I want you to stand in front of the mirror. Don't fix your clothes. Don't fix your hair. Don't worry about what you look like. Look at yourself in the eyes and ask yourself, what am I still carrying that no longer belongs in my life? Am I trying to build? Then ask, who might be paying for wounds that they didn't create? And finally, ask yourself, who am I becoming? Don't rush that one. Sit with it. For the last 3 conversations, we've looked at the people that surround us. We've looked at what shaped us. We looked at ourselves. And maybe you saw something in the mirror you didn't like. But seeing isn't the end of the story. Seeing it is where change becomes possible. You don't have to leave this table the same person who sat down. So don't leave only asking, why am I like this? Leave asking, who am I becoming? Because once you see it, you have a choice. You can keep repeating what wounded you, or you become the person who finally breaks the pattern. I'll repeat that. You can keep repeating what wounded you, or you can become the person who finally breaks the pattern. This is a seat at the table. Real conversations, real people, real growth. And remember, everyone has a story. Everyone has a seat at the table. The table is set. All that's missing is your story.
If this conversation made you think about something in your own life, send this episode to someone who might need a seat at this table too. And if you have a story or a question, we want to hear it. Simply open the camera on your phone, point it at the QR code on the screen, and tap the link that appears. It will take you directly to our Seat at the Table page, where you can join the community and stay connected. After you sign up, you can reply to the welcome email and share your story or question with us.